You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
Let's go ahead and get your name out. If you could introduce yourself. It was a little bit, I was like, wait, is it a hard R or is it an easy A? I don't know. Let me just ask him.
That's totally fair. So it's Danny Murr-Sloat.
Danny Murr-Sloat. Okay, so today we got Danny Murr-Sloat on from the Alpinstash out in Colorado, and just chatting up a bit, but want to roll into the show here. Again, welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. Thank you for being on. I really appreciate your time for today. You just probably got a lot of work going on, given the season and everything. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you and ask you a few questions about yourself and the cannabis industry and just a little bit of background. So I was doing my reading up, and I noticed that you did start out kind of like how I did with the cannabis industry. You had a medical ailment, and if you want to take it off from there and just kind of give us a little history about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for having me on. First off, so back in 2003, I woke up suddenly 2 weeks after I turned 21 with really bad stomach pains. I was hospitalized for 4 or 5 days, put on pain medication and discharged with pain medication. I still was in that pain. So I went through a series of doctors to try to figure out what was going on, gastroenterologists. Once they did their testing, they couldn't figure out what was up. They sent me to a physiatrist who's a pain doctor. At this point, that pain doctor, wanted to control my pain a little bit better and put me on to fentanyl. This was in, I think, 2004, before the opiate crisis was what it is today. And I don't think that would happen today. It was definitely a huge step up in terms of drugs. And I didn't really know what fentanyl was, and he put me on quite a big dose. And the next proceeding, 7 or 8 years were pretty much just a downward spiral and an opiate haze. My life began to consist of pretty much just going to different doctors, trying different treatments. I developed a nerve impingement problem in that time frame, which I think it was caused by the opiates. I was sleeping 16 plus hours a day, and I think that just slowly compressed the area in my neck. So a series of surgeries for that, more pain medication, medication for the side effects of the pain medication for the side effects of those medications. And I also was very stationary. I'd spent most of my time either sleeping or, in bed or in front of a computer. That was pretty much it. In 2009, I also developed a non-cancerous basal skull tumor, which required a pretty decent surgery to remove. In 2009, I was pretty desperate, still having lots of chronic pain, a ton of issues, and my father actually suggested I try medical cannabis. So I got my card. It had just become more accessible in Colorado in 2009. I got my card and went to a dispensary, got a free clone with that purchase, which is how I started growing. But I tried, cannabis for medical reasons, and I really began to change things and change my life pretty quickly.
Wow. So it took 8 years for you to kind of get through all the Western medicine, right? I'll put that in quotes loosely. And then you started your journey with cannabis, and your dad kind of pushed you into it. That's remarkable. Now, my question is, because a lot of people that do that, usually they come into cannabis very timidly. Apprehensively would be another word. And it causes, I feel it causes a lot of issues other than it stems from stigmas, projections, psychological development conditioning crap, societal conditioning crap. The reason why I brought it up is because how was your transition when you were coming off all these meds, 'Cause I never got on fentanyl, thank God. But I was on morphine for 4 years at 120 milligrams a day.
That's a pretty decent dose.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, man. It was real bad.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the reason why when I read up on you, and I was like, fuck, man, he had to go through the same shit, man. It had to be the same.
Oh, yeah.
So when you bring up the family now, and I'm like, well, because it came from your dad, I'm like, I'm curious. Did your, direct family have I guess, apprehensiveness towards that shift at all? Was that a welcomed new development?
For me personally, I was very apprehensive. I had definitely, I had my experiences in high school and a little bit after that. But especially when I was kind of deep in the medical and opiate problems, I had tried cannabis and had a pretty bad experience. Definitely paranoia, nausea, vomiting. And I don't necessarily know what that was from. So I was very apprehensive to try it again. Interestingly, I faced the stigmas that I faced were more internal because I had been, of the DARE generation and kind of, faced all those things. I was lucky in the part of the country that I'm from, Boulder, Colorado, is very cannabis friendly. And so I never really had those pressures externally, certainly not from my parents or anything growing up. But, when I did it tried it again for medical reasons, it was very quickly a welcomed thing. I mean, I noticed, relief from pain pretty much immediately. And that began to give me, more hope, more optimism, and just a mental relief from being in that mindset and being in kind of like nonstop pain. I realized that things could be different. And so I, pretty quickly, I changed that internal stigmatization and negative thoughts.
That's beautiful. I still run into it as far as that self-deprecating cyclical thinking of, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? I think we all develop it as children, at least people with consciousness, where we want to obey and abide and behave. And the root of it is based in, communal thinking or societal development, which is good, and a
Super
lot of
good.
yeah, it's really is because it does take some dramatic effects to shift it. Look at what we're dealing with nowadays, right? But at the same token, societal shifts aren't necessarily a negative thing. Like the development of the opiate crisis, we knew it was bad, but we weren't so acknowledged of our effects of practice, just prescribing opiates to the level that we were for certain people. And then when we had the opiate epidemic, is what I'm trying to state, we realized that we are knee-jerk reaction towards something that is a legitimate medical practice for certain ones. And at the same time, we are giving an opportunity for those who may not want to do opiates anymore. Because I got my letter. It was in 2016-17 from the VA. They're like, hey, the dose we got you on, you're going to wake up dead. Just so we're liability-wise, like, we told you so. That's what it was like. And so me and the wife made that decision. Hey, after a while, don't get me wrong, it did take a while still to fully commit to cannabis in the same, I would say I'm on the same path of commitment, definitely not in the same level, for shit not. I can't even, I told you I fucked up the photo period. Okay. So the wife and I, we talked about it, and, for 10 years now, I've been on that path of healing. And I don't know if I told you this, but your segment, the segment that we're doing now for the show is called Healing by Growing. And I really want our guests and our listeners to see different experiences, mutual experiences, mirrored experiences, and how some people are grasping at the opportunity. Some people are clinging to the past. and others are just kind of like, well, I don't fucking really know what to do, you know? And I think that's really good. I think that's a really good place to come from it with, because stigmas are real. You came up, your parents were hella cool. Sounds like my parents were hella cool too, but they were correctional officers in the state of California. So we know, hey, their conditioning is a little bit more no, you know.
Yeah.
And it did shift some things. My wife's perception of it was very no, you know, how she was raised, well, you know. And so that fed into a lot of internal battles of, is this and am I doing the right thing? For me, years later, it took me years later, yes, absolutely, 100%. A more cognitively available, more physically apt. Not necessarily, I can't do the same shit, no way. But let me tell you what, when I was on morphine, I didn't really give a shit anyways if I was in pain, because I was just so dulled down by the medication. So I was probably hurting myself more, you know, working out, trying to maintain my old idea of who I was. And cannabis kind of makes you in the moment go, you know, I could do that. It might hurt my back more, which isn't necessarily smart, because then I miss out with the kids and doing things around the house with the, you know, the wife and stuff. And what I came down to it was, there are very different strains and they're very different applications. And then I really read into the science behind it and organic growing, and fell in love with the whole science behind the growing. And now I'm like talking to people about, you know, microbiome this and cultivation that and artisan this. And I'm like, wow, just taken aback. Like, wow, I didn't know there was like all these different terpenes and 400 different chemical compounds and structures and organic material. You can use it for freaking guitars and guitar plugs and boxes and whatnot. I'm like, what? You can make buildings out of this shit. I was like, nah, now you're pulling my leg. But no, it's real. It's all real. Science is there. And to move on to the next little question I got for you is, when you started growing with that little clone and you run into all those little, you know, bumps in the road, and you're managing your expectations, you know, between each run and yield, how did you get to where you are and also maintain a positive outlook?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to where I was by just keeping going. I, you know, had a huge learning curve. But for me, when I started growing, it was super therapeutic. You know, it gave me, I was coming out of this opiate haze I had been in for so long. And you probably know my experience was like, because I kind of slowly went into the opiates, like you lose yourself, but it's in such a way that you don't know. I didn't know that I was that affected mentally. Like, you know, I did not know to the extent to which my judgment and just general, you know, emotional development had been so stunted until I began to get out of it. So, you know, really, I used growing as a way to plug myself back into life. You know, it gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You know, it gave me something to do, physical activity. I had, you know, the opposite thing where I just wasn't doing anything. And so, which was, you know, turned out was really bad for the pain that I was in. You know, a lot of nerve and muscle problems, if you don't do some form of physical activity, they just get worse. So that's kind of where I had been. And I saw that there was a future for myself in cannabis if I could, you know, do everything I could to learn as much as I could and to grow the best product that I could to really go after the craft and artisanal, you know, market and headspace. So that became my goal. And so that made made me see all my mistakes and failures. There was not a really good way to go about learning a lot of this information. I read books, I got on the internet, and if you've done growing, you know that it's sometimes very hard to find good information. So I was very much, and I kind of just have this anyways, is, self-taught, learned through my mistakes. So I got basic information and just knew that it would take a long time, and that I would have a lot of problems along the way. But as long as I learned from those mistakes, they weren't failures, and that kept me going. And I have had a number of them, and some of them really tested my resolve mentally, to whether or not to keep growing. But it was never a question. Quitting and not evolving was never a question for me, and that's not the type of person I am.
That's amazing, because it's a true story of triumph and success. And earlier I was reading up on not just the strains that you do, and the form of cultivation, and cool words like cultivars. I like that shit. I do. I like getting into shit that's just kind of coming out, like how wine was back in the day, and whiskey, and now beers and IPAs are, the IBUs, and the hoppiness. Ooh. I like that shit. I like adding oomph to it, right? Give it some oomph. Like when I was reading on the Lemingwinks, I had to go Lemingwinks. Huh. That sounds familiar. Took me a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. It took me about a week of Tuesdays, and I was like, wait a minute, I know where that one's from. Richard Greer's asshole. No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, pretty close.
But that was solid, man. And then I started reading on it, and Alpinstash, and how you guys cultivate, and the modalities that you cure and cultivate, and the level of I would say artisanship goes into the cultivation. Because our last conversation with Doogie was, we want to grow from the roots up, the foundation up, and not miss any steps, not necessarily make all the mistakes ourselves, but definitely learn by the steps and get really good at the basics, which I was, of course, picking up on your style. And I was like, okay, cool. And as I was looking at the quality of product and, of course, the advertisement, it's just a complete shift of what a lot of people are doing. And I don't like what a lot of people are doing. But what I do like is seeing people kind of go back to the roots of, this is a medicine. It's a very great medicine. You can indulge, of course, but the goal of plant-based medicine is to do just that. Help people get from being in opiate hazes and not necessarily present in life to, now we're doing X, Y, and Z with our lives, whatever that may be. I think that's the biggest key here is like with the earlier years of cannabis, it was this culture of 420 and, just a debauchery. Let's just call that, all right? Debauchery and douchebaggery. And then as this new wave of cannabis is coming out with the economic growth that we've seen in certain areas, it's a huge shift from even good products. And I'm like, I used to be able to get really great cannabis at a decent price. And now here in California, it's like you get okay cannabis for an excruciatingly expensive price. And I go, okay, like what is going on with the market? Usually when you have increased demand, increased supply, you see a lowering of price and a hiring of availability, right? At least on the black market. And then as you see people kind of growing their own, that quality is now hitting that curve, like you were saying. And that's where I'm at in life. I'm at that, wow, I really want to get better quality and better just nutritious herbs and fruits and vegetables and eating healthy. And that's part of the next question that we were going to talk about is you went from heavy and you lost how much weight was it by just focusing on what you're doing and using your own medicines? And how much weight did you lose again?
I lost 60 pounds.
60 pounds.
60 pounds. And the way, I put on that weight in the first place by, because of, for me, opiates and benzodiazepines gave me an insane sweet tooth, and just and complete and total lack of movement. Over the course of years. So, shoving my face full of terrible stuff. Actually, my wife gave that period of my life the nickname of Sheet Cake Danny, because I would just, I would literally buy sheet cakes and eat them. Doing that and while literally doing no physical movement, um, I growing up, I had always been fairly active. Colorado's known for its outdoor activities, hiking and climbing. I did a lot of, and then just to go from that to nothing. Once I got off of all the meds, my diet sort of normalized, and cannabis inspired me to become active again and, really enjoy my time in the outdoors. So, getting off all the bad medication, just getting naturally back to a kind of a not sheet cake exclusive diet, and then moving again, did wonders for me. And again, the physical activity of growing was also key. Talk about the mistakes I made. The first round I did was in a tent with too much light and no AC. So I was, moving around in, 90 to 100 plus degree temperatures. And that is a good way to lose some weight, is to sweat it out. And so, that was how I did it.
Nice. And so as you're now where you're at, and you saw that progressional success, just as much as it seems as maybe you didn't catch on to the progressional slip with the opiates, right? But it made you aware of this progressional success. At least for me, listening to your story back on it with the perspectives I have, right? I go, man, that is amazing, because that's exactly how I felt with the opiates. And I comment it constantly because, my wife and everybody in my family was like, when you're on morphine, you're an asshole already. But when you're on the morphine, it's like, fuck, Joe's going to be that guy. I'm like, yeah, my bad. I mean, it wasn't, I'm not a violent person. I was just more rude, more abrupt, to put it that way.
Yeah.
I didn't have much patience, even with the kids. And I just realized that it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Even though I was able to do stuff, it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And you're right. Going back to the losing the weight, I gained a shit ton of weight too when I got off of morphine. I just got fucking fat, is what I call it, just fucking fat. My wife just says, straight up, dude, nah, you got to lose some weight because, I know you're in pain. She's a personal trainer, so I get away with it a little less. Oh.
Yeah.
So she's a great woman. She's been my caregiver for 10 years now, given all the crap. But so she sat me down and we started doing more and more and more just basic stuff, like how do we regain strength in the core, doing yoga wheels, adjusting the spine, making sure balance is there, strength is there. And then, of course, me being the big old knucklehead that I am, I'm running outside trying to move as much dirt as I can and staying out in the sun, getting sunburned, digging holes. And I'm like, yeah, I just got to stay active. And it's working. And, I mean, I went from 275 and I'm about 258, and I'm still I'm a heavy guy. Yeah, it's all good. Don't get me wrong. It's always good to stay active. And some days I drink a little bit too much water and I'm a little heavier, or I drink a little too much juice, or I have a few beers and I have a few pieces of pizza. I'm not going to sit down and berate myself. It's like, hey, cool, tomorrow we got to do a little extra work around the yard, around the property, or, bend over and do a couple more stand-ups and sit-downs and whatnot. And it's that mentality of I'm just not going to stay still. I call it keeping the rock in motion. The old, I don't know if it's correct to say Oriental anymore. Maybe it's Asian or that side of the world's philosophy of, the moving rock gathers no moss, right? And, or the Rolling Stone, I don't fucking know how to say that. Regardless, that's the point. And I think that's beautiful, especially because, I'm outdoors. I'm trying to learn how to cultivate better. trying to not necessarily be on your scale, because yours is a very high level of accomplishment. And I was just, again, I always like to plug for our listeners so they don't have to do the research ourselves, is you've been interviewed on High Times, Forbes. You got another interview coming up with Montel Williams on Let's Be Blunt About It, I believe it's called. Yeah, Let's Be Blunt with Montel Williams. You have these great things going on, and it started from you just not taking what the standard was anymore. And I think that's what's really good, because of, hey, here's fentanyl, not just like here's opiates, but fentanyl. And you make the decision of, now I'm going to take an opportunity. Not, hey, let's see where it goes. Not dilly daddle and, man, I hope I get it right, But no, you sat down and you trudged along for how many years you've been in this industry now? That would be what?
Well, we were licensed in 2014 and we got our plants in 2015, but I had my first industry job in 2010. And I've worked in both the legal cannabis world in 2010, excuse me, and then I've also spent a number of years working at a grow store too. My first experiences with legal cannabis, lowering of quality, and that's not about who I am and not about what I want to do with my grow knowledge. So when I got into these early industry jobs and saw the writing on the wall of we're going to grow as much as we can for as cheap as we can, and we don't care about the product or the health, I exited that pretty quickly, and then decided to go to take horticulture classes and then work and in the grow store side of things to sort of learn the ins and outs of equipment and nutrients and grow techniques and all that stuff. And then started working on getting Alpinstash up and running. And really, like you were saying, it's the rolling stone gathers no moss. I mean, that's just the mentality of keep going. You realize, that you just got to be persistent. If you have a goal and it matters to you, you every day you just got to put in work. And so that, to that end, we really, as a company, like to help people get into growing, like to help them learn about growing and show our techniques, because it's been so important to us and to me. And, we love sharing the knowledge. And you talked earlier about, you had a conversation previous about really the basics of growing, and that's really what growing is and should be. There's no proprietary grow techniques that we have. I would submit that there's no proprietary grow techniques that anybody has. You're not even growing the plant. The plant's doing the growing itself. You're just, providing the basics as best you can with what a plant needs to thrive: light, nutrients, environment, and some things like helping prune it so that you can optimize growth, and then let the plant do the rest. So really, the basics are the foundation of growing in what you need to be a good grower. And this whole thing started from just starting small.
That is beautiful. Yeah, because it is, it's the small steps that get us up the mountain, right? And just listening to that approach to growing, it's a beautiful thing because it mirrors, and you could transcend that information to so many different applications of living and life. I do that with my kids as best as I can, give them the environment, give them the temperature, lights, I don't know, whatever it is that they need as kids, right? And then just kind of let them, it's going to happen, make their mistakes, be there to guide them. That's their pruning and shit. And it's just a beautiful concept of growth that I think along the lines with organic growing of any food source or vegetable, medicine, herb, whatever it is. And if you correspond that to life, we stop being so hyper-focused on the end result. Like you were saying, how this industry shifted from genuinely decent, good products to we need a lot.
And people.
Yeah, and people. Oh yeah, that shift, it's pretty noticeable.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. And when we look at it as a product and you see it just quantifying, but not the quality isn't going up as much as the quantity, I go, man, we're just giving people shit and telling them it's a fucking prime rib. And I see that in a lot of different markets with just the economy right now and the development of industry. And I guess it would be the root of that is value and perception, priority, right? But as a person, that's been through it, the whole rigmarole of medicine, Western medicine, right? I don't like calling it medicine by itself because we just practice to repeat for Western medicine, it seems like. And no matter what we do, I feel as though the society, or at least the ones that are going through it the most, or the ones that are actually desperate enough to break out of the norm, are going to be that leader group that comes out and says, hey, cannabis is amazing. Don't treat that shit cheap, bruh. And then as the quality keeps going up and up and up, that's where the focus goes to. So it's kind of like how in the Renaissance, when the printing press and everything was made available and they just started printing out shit books. And nowadays you can get a shit book on audio like that, right? Well, if we went back to the days where we were a little bit more stringent and strict about how we made books and who copied the book and the information and how the information was portrayed and treated throughout, the evolution of literature, we would be a little bit better off. I'm not saying that, don't leave it up to people to figure it out for themselves, but for something that's developing as majorly as the cannabis industry, it's projected to be trillions of dollars within 30 to 40 years. When you look at the economic roots that we're laying down right now, I'm not timid about it because of good people like yourself, and good people like Doogie and everybody else that we're going to be on this segment discussing just growth within cannabis culture as well. But how do we then mirror those corresponding values, that integrity, and apply it to community, right? The same philosophy, how do we get people that are really great around other great people and get that synergistic growth to propagate into a better environment for cultivars like yourself, or cultivators like yourself, for patients like yourself, for other patients like myself, other entrepreneurs that want to see this type of market better developed. There's a billion different wine companies, right? But the ones we remember are the ones that do it right. There's a bunch of different champagne and beer companies, but again, it's the ones that do it right. Those are the ones that we remember and stay through. So it's pretty exciting where you're at. I have a few more questions for you as far as, of course, the basics of growing. When you're starting,
sorry to interrupt, but if I can really just hit on
go ahead.
What you were saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So definitely, in order to have a quality in a connoisseur market in a high quality product, you need a few different things. First off, you need a consumer that wants that, right, and they're willing to pay for that, because there's no doubt that a craft product takes more knowledge. It tends to be a little bit more expensive because you've got to have better inputs to it. It takes a lot more passion, and it takes a lot more elbow grease. So that's not really replicatable on a huge scale, which is how you get really cheap product available. So you have to have a consumer that's willing to pay, what would be, if everything was priced fairly, a little bit higher of a price. And you have to have that consumer that knows that, because right now, what you said was, there's so much availability of expensive cannabis on the legal market, but the quality is so. And a lot of that is because, because of prohibition, people are just, used to getting shit across the country. And then when it becomes legal, it's so novel that they don't know what good cannabis is. And a lot of them want to, but there's a learning process there. So you have to have an educated consumer base that's willing to pay a little bit more, or that just consciously spends and votes with their dollars. You need to support the companies that are doing it right. But the craft beer and alcohol market is in industry is very, very similar. I have family that's back on the East Coast in Jersey, and 5-6 years ago there was no craft beer. The craft beer was like Heineken or Blue Moon. And now I go out there. I was just out there recently, and there's breweries everywhere because craft beer finally made it out to that part of Jersey. People started drinking it, and they said, "Oh my gosh, beer can taste like this. An IPA is a thing," And then so all of a sudden they start becoming more educated, and then they demand a better product. And next thing you know, now there's craft everywhere. And the other interesting thing is craft. The awesome thing is that craft products tend not to actually compete with each other. I know that, for example, in beer, there are breweries that open up next door, and they don't compete against each other directly. They actually invite more people to come and enjoy craft beer, and part of the fun is going from one brewery to another. And there's lots of collaborations that happen. So, that's how do you get like minds together, is by the people that do this for the love, understanding and recognizing other people that do it for the love of it. Because we're really, at the end of the day, as small growers, small industry people, our competition is the big corporations that are trying to put us out of business, but they can't touch our quality. So even then, we're not really competing against each other because we have, this niche market, and together, we can raise the quality, we can raise the standards, we can raise the demand, we can increase education for the consumers, so that, we stick around and we stay.
That is amazing. And I'm glad that you reiterated on that, because I did want to ask, that was the follow-up part. You're actually one of the top 5 consultants, according to Forbes, in the cannabis economy marketplace. And as you spoke about it right now, we could see why, right? But the greatest thing about that is to see that your eyes are on the prize and very well understood, because for a patient, it kind of passes a lot of those worries and paranoias of, hey, is big cannabis going to come in and uproot all of this, and this is going to be pretty much the new level of where we're at, or B, are there different markets, just like how you utilize, microbrewing as, we're not even in competition with each other. We're not even really in competition with large scale brewing or anything like that. This is its niche. This is what it's worth, and this is where it's at. And we need aware consumers or intelligent consumers that are aware of and seeking these stuffs out. And I go, yeah, you're right. Like, that's actually a way better method of going about it, because it's like those cult favorite movies versus a blockbuster, and I hate using analogy to break down analogies, but that's the best thing I could say for it. It's like, here's this amazing movie that most people don't go out on a Friday night and spend $40 to go watch in a movie theater. They wait till it's a DVD, or wait until it's somebody recommended it. Like, I remember when A Clockwork Orange was, the taboo thing to watch in high school, right? And now everybody, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just watching A Clockwork Orange. It makes things normative, right? And that place of quality is where I can see definitely your shit, for sure. Because as I'm looking through and I'm going and I'm like, your marketing isn't even similar to most others. Like, it's not it at all. Using names like Lemmingwinks and Alpinstash and what was the other one? There was one that had me rolling, and I was like, oh my God, I had to take a picture of the list because for the interview, it makes things easier, even though I'm taking my time.
Yes, I mean, we are, one thing that we've always been as a company is just true to ourselves. So, we're nerdy, we're goofy, we're dorky, as people, and we love doing what we're doing. And so that's just who we are as a company. So,
and that's the fun. That's the fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like when you get all your other steps down right, you're allowed to, and you should have fun. That's what I teach my kids. 1 through 7, those are the rules. safety, teamwork, respect, discipline, be kind, have faith, and always have fun. And
yeah,
you're there. Like I love it because it was Falcor.
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like,
So,
yeah, I'm geeky too.
I mean,
It's all right.
no. We got to be us. And the other thing that is important, was important for me, and is important to me, is be approachable. Because earlier you talked about, the cannabis industry, and there are so many people that are in this industry that are, trying to portray that they're too cool, they're not approachable, they have to brand a certain way, and that's just not who we are. Like, we just stay true to our values, and try to be approachable, and try to be fun, and we really just, we keep our head down and just do it. At the end of the day, makes us feel good and authentic, and hope that comes across.
It is. It definitely is coming across, man. It was one of the reasons that when I was presented with the opportunity to talk with you, I got more and more excited. I'm typically one of those types where people go like, "Oh, you're an artist?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, so you're very introvert?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm actually the opposite. I'm very extrovert unless it's an important conversation." Then I become very introverted, very guarded, and very selective. And I'm always that way, especially with the podcast, because I feel as though there are too many other shows out there. You can consume your information or podcast any which way you love and watch or like or whatever it is you want. But what I try to do, exactly what you said, stay authentic to who you are, be who you are, tell the good stories. That's the way I look at it, and get the right people in front of others.
Mm-hmm.
I was just doing our demographics. We're not like 1 billion listeners or 1 million listeners. We're in the thousands of listeners groups, but it's throughout the world. So it's like we got listeners in Russia.
That's awesome.
We got listeners. Yeah, and I thought it was the coolest thing because I hadn't sat down and do it for years. One of my good buddies goes, "Hey, do you have listeners in Indiana?" And I was like, "I don't know." So then I pull it up and I look it up, and sure shit, yeah, a few listeners in Indiana throughout the year, a few listeners all throughout United States. The coolest ones are like in the weirder countries that I can't even read. I have to like Google the lettering because it's in North Korean or South Korean. So it would have to be in South Korean. That was stupid, right? And then a lot of the different things that I like is how people seem to love that. It's not a big thing. It's not a little thing. It's just a thing. I like making things for people, and I love having great people on to talk about wonderful things that provide opportunities to hopefully save other people's lives or give them a little sense of a passion or growth. And that's the main focus of these segments, is to teach, not necessarily teach, but provide the opportunity for education, where people are, "Hey, here's an idea. Oh my God, there's an idea. Wonderful. I wonder what about that." And to learn the basics of whatever craft they get indulged into, and then develop whatever it is they wish to. Because that was my story of, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and regardless of what I can or can't do, I'm going to do something. And that's how we started recording, etc. But now moving on and looking into cannabis, I just go, it's such a beautiful thing that constantly gives back. I go out and I garden with my boys, and we're pulling the little fan leaves off that are drying, or we're pruning up or pulling them away from the main stem to get a little undergrowth. And they're like, "Dad, what's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, don't focus on that just yet. We want to talk about the soil." So when we talk about the soil and all the different little amendments of compost teas and mills and whatnot, and they're like, "Wow!" And as the little bugs come up that eat the other bugs, and so you don't even have to use freaking any kind of pest control pretty much. Maybe a little neem oil, sometimes a little caterpillar killer. But other than that, that's the reason why I really love being outdoors. Indoors is such a beautiful concept of growing too for me because of how scientific it is. I stem from a laboratory background in medicine. So I have that geekiness of, I don't know what this, compartmentalization, very basic structures, beautiful things like statistics and variances and analytics and testing and all that great stuff. I love it. So that's my little geek moment. But now that that you guys are growing the way you're growing, and the way you guys are advertising the way you're advertising, again, I have to hit on it because it is very unique. I don't see crystals or healing crystals on other people's forums. I don't see that in the background of how they appeal to their niche markets, and you guys are nailing it. And to see again and again and again the growth of cannabis itself and the idea and concept of it being a plant-based medicine or therapy for growing, it's just a beautiful time to live. Just a beautiful time.
It is, and thank you so much for saying that. Especially with our branding. I mean, my wife has been taking the lead with that, and she just crushes the pictures and that artistic side of it. Our company is very much a partnership, and that is really what makes us a company and us survive. And our employees that we have are excellent. They're just like family, and we are a cohesive team. And that's one of the reasons why at the small scale that we're at, which is comparatively to any well-established market, I mean, we are tiny, and we are underfunded, and our budget for anything is not even close to what most of our competition is. But we have the passion, we have the dedication, and we have the team in place and the knowledge, and that's how we move forward.
Exactly, man. And like I said, it's the small steps that get us up the mountain, right?
I would say that all steps are small. It's just if you take enough of them together,
yeah, I'll get you anywhere.
On top of the mountain. Yeah,
shit, that is true. Fuck, man. And where you're at now, I'm just saying, like, as far as Colorado goes, it's a really great leaping point. California, we did ourselves dirty, and I mean it. Like the AMA Act.
Yeah.
Ugh. God, I really feel as though that's what kind of popped that bubble, because we're seeing it shift. And even with, the opiate crisis that it was, I talk a lot about it because you see an influx of black market utilization of different things such as opiates. And that I think it stems from desperation and lack of information flow, because like we were saying, it's, the information's there. You got to be aware of it. That's the only bad part. For some people, they're not aware. And
and I think the problems with California's legalization is that enough time has lapsed since legalization began that really, really large corporations and companies are now trying to dominate. And from what I understand in California, especially in the individual counties and towns, like those special interests really came in and had a whole lot of say on what happened and how it happened.
Oh yeah. Like, so I sit on a few boards here, and I'm just cutting my teeth on how to pretty much troubleshoot those issues for a lot of different reasons. And what I'm learning is, as long as you're perceived as clean cut and well oriented, right, you can pretty much do whatever you want. If politicians know you have a background in this and you have enough money in that, you're good to go. You can rub those elbows, you can grease those wheels, and you're going to get motion in it pretty quickly. But it's that reutilization of old think, in this county specifically, San Diego, that I've noticed we're limiting things towards people because of a bias or stigma that we've latched onto, and it's called an anchoring bias in psychology, right? And what we're doing as a community is kind of controlling each other with these unilateral controls of saying, well, only in incorporated areas. So we're allowed to vote on shit, right? And we vote on it, and we want it. And I know that this is probably a long bullshit political conversation, whatever. But I go, it's very important because of how our laws break down and effectively are enforced and utilized within the construct of whom has the authority. So the governor can say, hey, yeah, cannabis, it's legal, great stuff. And like you brought up counties and stuff. I didn't learn this until I went to go visit, but Lone Tree, just down the road from Denver, has a very different county guideline for cannabis. Mm-hmm. And same here. San Diego County has a very different guideline for cannabis than LA County, and et cetera. And even now with this COVID-19, we're seeing how things are very different in our assumptions of how things break down and how things actually break down within how the county is organized and how the state is organized and how the nation is organized and how those 2 and 3 operating bodies kind of do shit. Well, in this county, you can't have anything for profit being grown in an unincorporated area. Well, the problem with that is the majority of San Diego County, where there's land to be utilized for growing anything, is unincorporated. So,
yeah.
So what we have done is effectively cut ourselves out of any kind of agricultural growth within the realm of cannabis, right? And
probably, I would assume that the places that are incorporated are very expensive. So,
oh yeah,
somebody like you or me can't easily acquire that land to do it, but somebody that's got a $1 billion budget can take it no problem.
Exactly. And then to reiterate even the smaller things, to qualify for a license, or not a temporary license. Can you get a temporary one, but you only be able to operate, I think, for like 2-3 years, and then they'll say no, which isn't marketable. You're not going to draw anybody in for whatever reasons you may have. So what we've done is essentially make it, you have to have a $2 million pocket. If your $2 million aren't in your pocket,
that's crazy.
Yeah, you are not getting into cannabis as far as a legitimate growing operation, and the liability alone, the insurance there, to meet that requirement, I think it's another $1 million. So it's kind of like we're snuffing ourselves out due to these technicalities, and we're positioning ourselves as a state to be overwhelmed by, like what you were saying, these corporations with the big pockets. They have no agenda to make good quality medicines. It's just, we have a product, here's our unit price, here's what our return of interest is, etc. And that's okay, but I don't feel like it's the best thing. And for California to do what we've done, it's just like, yuck.
Yeah, I mean, that large scale, I mean, any consumable, any industry has the commercialized aspect, and we're lucky enough that Colorado, the way the laws are set up here, it's up to the individual county municipality to make the laws specific for that area, but the state makes it pretty dang easy and pretty dang cheap to get going. There's, where we are, there's no, you don't have to have a minimum bank account. You just got to be able to afford a lease, and you have to be able to afford the licensing fee, which is not that, tens of thousands of dollars is how much that costs. And that's it in order to start business.
It's remarkable.
And yeah. I mean, they really, so, I mean, obviously, by the time you buy equipment and you get a lease, which are often premiums because they are limited, and you do all that, like it does end up costing money. So it's still inaccessible for somebody that has, only has, $20,000-$30,000, but it's very accessible, if you're able to raise a little bit of capital, and it's nowhere near, millions.
See, that's fucking awesome. Yeah. This over here, it's nuts. Like, I've looked into tons of different ways of getting certain things off the grounds for veterans because their goals are extreme. They have high expectations. And that's what I always seem to be doing, is managing expectations, especially for myself, especially with the cannabis industry. It's like you meet some great people, and you hear the stories and you see what's going on and you go, okay, yeah, things are going to go not right. Whoa, look at that price. Like, look at how this is breaking down within the state of California, let alone other states. Well, Oregon seems to be doing a little bit better with the economic growth, but that's how they're seeing it. They're not combating it necessarily. Yeah, some are, as this evil, right? Like that's the thing, is like in our county, there's a young lady. She sits on the county district supervisor. She's one of the county district supervisor. I think we have 5. In San Diego, well, fucking California is massive, right? So when you look at how the politics play into overturning certain things, you're literally fighting people's religious bias, right? Or biases, however you want to see that, on the concept of this plant-based medicine. Now, keep in mind what I just said. right? We're arguing somebody's religious bias on something that has nothing to do with religion. And even if it did, it is a plant that has a seed-bearing fruit. And I always love having that conversation with people that are very hardcore. And I go, so let me get this straight. You want me to go to a doctor? Yeah. I already went to the doctor for 10 years. Yep. They pretty much said that they were going to kill me. No, they literally said they were going to kill me in the letter if I keep doing their medical protocols, and that they wouldn't have any liability. On top of that, it didn't work that great. I got all these different side effects now and all these different ailments, and all I want is this plant. I want to juice its leaves. I want to smoke its flower. I want to concentrate its flower. I want to brew its roots. I want to do this. And you have a problem with it? Yup. Okay. All right. That's pretty much what people... But at the end of the day, they'll be like, thank you for your service. Which is fucking wonderful, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they can legally, thank you for putting your, physical and emotional well-being at risk, but only want to heal it if it lines up with their beliefs.
Yep.
And sometimes they're pocketbooks. And I am not religious by any means, but I'm pretty sure that the Bible makes clear that all seed-bearing fruits are fair game.
Yep.
And people like to selectively not think about that.
People like cherry picking shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we went through, iterations of that, in the town that we operate in specifically. The old mayor and the old, city board members were pretty anti-cannabis and did it very, very begrudgingly and small and made it very tough. But then a new group came in, fortunately right before we started, and they were very open to it and made it much more accessible. And so, there is going to be a changing of the old guard, but, everything I hear is that California is a shit show, and that there's really no way out. And you combine that because there's such an entrenched and well-established, culture of growing that's sometimes generationally deep, and you made it inaccessible to all those people. And so what are they going to do, and how are they going to do it? I mean, they're not going away. You go up to the Emerald Triangle and you tell them all to stop. That would probably end badly for you. It would be a bad day.
Yeah, but that's how it's been for years. See, that's
generation.
Yeah, see, that's the thing too. Is like people. I don't know. I always go back to the whole, laws, right? What the fuck are laws? Okay, it's written pieces of parchment, that of which intelligible persons either seek or not, right? And if they don't fucking even know they exist. And if they do, they're more than likely going to look at them and peruse them and may not even utilize it. Like laws that benefit man, or I should say the civilian, right? We have the Second Amendment, we have the First Amendment, we have the Third and Fourth, and all those different amendments. Those are amendments. These are articulation on parchment of which are God-given rights, right? Which, religious or not, it's kind of a very, very founded point in and of itself. Regardless of this piece of parchment, these rights still exist. Okay, so when we get into the battle of begrudging opinions or belittled perspectives, minimized dejections, when we go in to convey these particular perspectives of I would say righteousness to authorities, right? They come down like, oh no, that's just bullshit, right? Instead of actually listening intelligibly to people that may be in this industry for 30 years, 40 years, generations, right? Especially like up in Humboldt. Oh my God, that whole, what is it called? Emerald Triangle, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good luck. Tell them to stop. You've been at war with drugs since fucking Reagan or whomever, and you couldn't have gotten them to stop. You still can't get them to stop. Bruh.
No.
Come on. Where's your
They
head?
could have made a path towards making it legally accessible and doable, but it sounds like they're going the exact opposite. And, that is super, super unfortunate. And, I have a friend of a friend who tried to have a micro grow in Sonoma, and he, at the county meeting at the beginning of the day, he was like, they're going to allow they're going to make this accessible to people like me, and then at the end of the day, he said, people in suits showed up, very professional people with lawyers. And by the end of the day, the county had made it, favoring corporations with big money and made it inaccessible to him. And that's a shame.
It is. I think it's I feel as though it's the same curbing of capitalism, right? That happened with the water rights in Morro Bay. I think it was in the 80s. And this is a California political thing. But it was an extremely interesting dynamic of California politics and history on how these water rights were given to essentially a private group, right? And they had these major aquifers in the valley between Central California and Southern California. And what they're doing every year, California is in a drought, but it's not in a drought because we are not getting enough rainfall. It is because of the siphoning of this normal flow of water that would reach all the way down to San Diego, thank God, because we have canals and shit. It stops right there, and it's revalved all the way to LA. Billions of gallons are pumped I think it's like every other day or every month when we do have our rain season, because our infrastructure isn't strong enough to hold all this water. It's essentially what's going on in China right now. They're flooding their people, right? Because of the lack of control and infrastructure. The infrastructure can't tolerate the weight of the water and blasey. But the worst part is, for generations now, this has been going on. And a lot of my friends, and this has very little to do with cannabis, but tremendously to do with agriculture in California. They rooted out a lot of these agricultural families, ranchers, farmers of all kinds, because of this water restriction laws or clause that honestly isn't legally standing. And it's kind of the same way that your buddy got rooted out. I don't know if you ever heard of the Browns Act. This is an act that I have to be aware of because I'm in a position of no authority, but technically registered as a county person. I don't even know what it's called. But there's an act that you have to become aware of, that if you vote or if you discuss certain things, if you're at a quorum, if you're not, if you're in a quorum, if it's this, there's procedural liability, there's this liability. You can't favor one or the other. You can't take pocket gifts. You can't, all this weird shit. And I read it 3 or 4 times to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. And then I look at the politics going on in the world, and just in my little old town, and I go, does anybody else read these shits? Because they're doing that. And right here is where they're doing it. And I'm reading the piece of paper that says they're not allowed to do that. Yet here we are. Here's your poor buddy, trying to get something off the ground, and you're hitting all those little brick walls that honestly shouldn't be there. There is no legitimate reasoning behind it. People do it because, I don't know, crony capitalism. You can call it that.
That's exactly what it is. And in a projected $1 trillion industry,
yes,
those companies don't get all that money by not bleeding every last cent from everybody possible and making it impossible to not, or making it impossible to participate for other people.
Yeah.
But that's where the craft, that's why I feel insulated in the craft market, because no matter who they are, they're, the best that they can do is try to buy craft companies. And even then, as we see with beer, you have a craft company, it gets bought out by a bigger corporation, and then they sort of start to kind of lower their quality and their demand, not necessarily demand, but, then the connoisseurs that seek the craft product, they understand what's going on. So this company is no longer craft, and so now they go for that one, and so we feel insulated and safe because of that. We can provide something that those companies can't.
That's beautiful, dude. I mean, honestly, that's the best way to focus on anything, is like you were saying, to be yourself and be who you are and focus and just keep going with persistence.
And do the best you can.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, we part of the reason we do what we do is because it's the pursuit of perfection, which you never get, which is why it's the pursuit of it. but it's something that motivates us. Is because we want to do the best that we can for the sake of doing that.
See, and that's the beautiful thing. It's for the sake of that pursuit, and it's a very I want to say wholesome, but it's a very very, very important value. Okay. And I mean that because like through all my progression of development and growth and health up to this point, I got my birthday coming up this week on Friday. Whoop, whoop, 35. Here we go. Staying alive.
Nice.
Right. And
happy birthday.
Thank you very much, kind sir. And I'm excited about it because for the first time in years, I'm excited about it. Like for years and years and years, I thought I was going to die before I was 25. Personal life choices, career options, whatever you want to call it. That's just what this kid thought. And it was a perceived bias. It was an anchored bias. It was my perception of reality, but it has no fact or place in actuality, right? And as I grow and develop and I meet people like yourself and in the field of success that you're in, and just changing perspectives of conversation and intellectuality, and we resonate on these core intrinsic values that transcend, occupation, they transcend culture, they transcend community. And it's fortitude, it's persistence, perseverance. It's I would say honor is kind of like a fluff piece to all of that, because we can call what honor is. I think it's the more romanticized approach to discussing the actual values of people. And to have that value, that core value, is amazing. And that's the only thing that kept me moving forward is I don't know why. I want to do it right. I don't know why. And that's really honestly the best thing some people can do in their pursuits is not know the why, but just keep doing it. And then the why comes. The why, you'll figure out the why once you're there. But as you're building it every day, every step, every which way, all these things happen, and you may get setbacks, right? But that persistence and that view of I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm not going to have negative or pessimistic views of competition. I'm not going to put down others to lift myself up. And I'm going to continuously strive, and you said it best, thrive in this circumstance with what you have. And I think that's a beautiful approach to life and economy, or growing cannabis, or establishing Alpinstash, developing these strains that are geared towards more than just, oh, here's a cool flavor somebody likes, or this smells like cat piss. Oh, that's wonderful. Give me some more of that shit. No, it's like it's actual genuinely good, and it's called lemon wings. And you're like, wait, does it go in this end? Oh, is it going in that end?
Depends what adventure you're seeking.
Oh my God. I love comedy. That shit's great. That's so good.
Yeah. And South Park, those guys are from here, from our part of Colorado, and they're like hometown heroes. So that's why we have a number of strains that are kind of shout outs to them.
That's beautiful. Now, a couple more questions. You're married. Your wife has been an integral part of, building this vision of both of yours. And as a married man, I always go, isn't it a beautiful thing when things work out with your partner? So much more so rewarding. I'm pretty sure that was her helping us out with the computer, right?
Yes, that was.
Yeah, same here. My wife always helped me with the computer. Yeah. And I always want to give a shout out to the spouses, behind the scene, and they're really not. They're actually in it. They're doing it the most, and they're the best thing in life. I just think that's a beautiful relationship to give a shout out to, and say that I hope you guys are doing great and moving forward with everything else that's going on in the world. Do you have any kids yet?
Yeah, actually, our first one is going to be a year in a couple of weeks.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Yeah, so that, he has made moving forward in these times much easier, because we're between business, our relationship, and him. It's been distracting.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of mental energy and focus. But I mean, this company, I'm really, my life in general is, she's the reason why those things are as good as they are, both the company and life. And, she is at least 50% of Alpinstash and at least 50% of, just raising a child too.
That is beautiful.
She's over there glaring at me saying 50%.
Yeah, 50%. Oh, okay. I got your 50%, motherfucker.
On a good day, yeah.
Beautiful.
Maybe 53%.
Maybe 54 and a half. Let's just.
Yeah.
60-40 then. 60-40.
Yeah, I'll take that for sure.
Oh,
so
man.
I mean, it's been trying to work. I mean, we definitely had there was a large learning curve for both of us when we started working together. Figuring that out because it adds a different dynamic and there are challenges. And but at the end of the day, the fact that we're building our life together is much more rewarding than if I think than if we were just doing our own separate things.
That is so true. That is very, very true, man. Very fucking true. Well, shit, brother. I very much appreciate your time. I'm glad that we got to leave it on a great shout out to the spouses and everything else that's going on in life. A little boy, 1 year old. That's beautiful. I got 2 kids, 5 and 8. Cherish the youth. They grow up so damn fast.
Oh my God, it's insane already. I mean, you hear that literally everybody tells you that.
Yeah.
But then when you see it, it's insane. The time frame in progression is insane.
You'll be taken aback, and I mean that. As your kid progresses and does things and learns things, mimics you, and maybe not all the best qualities, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful time, especially with what you got going on as far as an entrepreneurial concept and what you got as far as your consulting. Personally, it's an amazing time. I'm so happy to be able to discuss this stuff with you about growing and healing and finding your path and healing through growing. Want to make sure we hit our title at least twice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Healing through by
the
growing.
The growing for me, growing cannabis for me was as healing, if not more so, than ingesting it. So it's so therapeutic. Anybody out there that's looking for something, to do, especially during these stressful times and times where you might not be able to get, have access, I recommend everybody try growing and look at it as, something that will, just be therapeutic. And to that end, we have a YouTube channel where we go over all of our techniques. We're adding to that. We really want to help empower people to grow themselves, because it was so therapeutic for us. And I think it will help people. And it also, I hope that people can understand the love and passion that we put into it when they try it themselves. So, if you want to know more, please check out our YouTube. You can check us out on Instagram. Our Instagram is Alpinstash. Our webpage, alpinstash.com. That's ALPINSTASH.com. We're really switching a lot of our focus towards continuing to empower people to know how to learn to grow themselves.
Beautiful. So that's alpinstash.com, and YouTube is Alpinstash, ALPINSTASH. And this is Danny Murr-Sloat.
Yep.
There we go.
You got it.
Thank you so much for your time, Danny. I hope that we get to speak again. Just catching up, just talking, seeing where life is. Probably in a few weeks or so. Maybe a little after harvest. I don't know, or in between when you got some more time. Anything you ever need from us, just shoot me a line, either directly or indirectly, and we'll wrap up there.
Internet's hello. Alltså sen idag hörs när man får på när ni ska göra så ska för när man kan presentera och det är bestämt att ni ska göra shit.
Well, I the need to